on this Tuesday, September 9th. Do you believe it? How fast time is going? It's so hard to believe. So hard to keep track of, my word. I hope this is reaching you in a good place and your fall is starting off on the right foot. I wanted to hop on here and to share some happenings going on, and also reach out to you if you have any stories that you'd like me to take a look into or watch. You're more than welcome to email me at gracebookcontact@gmail.com, or you can start subscribing to, I just took a look at the settings of YouTube. It's the handle is on YouTube is GP Live Now, but it's not live now. It will be live tomorrow. I have to wait 24 hours. I wanted to touch base about some stuff that I'm working on, including a docu-series, which I'm so excited. I can't wait until it's actually, we're on episode 2. We're starting episode 3. We have 7, at least 7. There might be 2 more, I'm not sure. But we're going sort of at a snail's pace, which I don't mind, because the material for this is just, oh my word, I'm so excited to finally get a chance to work on something that I enjoy so much. It's inspired by that concept of those with the eyes to see and ears to hear. Why is it that some people have certain views, others don't? It's not necessarily delving into the academia behind it all, like neurology, perception, third eye type of stuff, but it does go deep into the topic. Why is it that some people have what I refer to as the eyes to see and ears to hear, and others just seem to, especially when everyone is so polarized now, politically, most of all, as we're seeing, and what is it that makes one person see something that the others don't? And this little bit, which I've already posted on this page, sort of explains an old parable I heard years and years and years ago. Never quite been able to get it off my mind, and I see why now, this many years later. Here is eyes to see, ears to hear.
What is the difference between those who are socially programmed and those with the eyes to see and ears to hear? The story goes 2 men are on a busy street corner in New York City. One, a Native American, says, "Oh, can you hear the sweet birds?" The other man says, "Birds? It's too noisy out here." "Ah," the Native American man says, "you hear, but do you listen?" He grabbed some change from his pocket, threw it up into the air. As it hit the hard sidewalk at their feet, every single head turned. We are conditioned to respond to what we pay attention to. Take the time to not only hear, but listen.
Niet eki solwash, ka niet anocheji. Eki solwash, ka niet anocheji.
These boys are now fertilizing daffodils. But if you listen real close, you can hear them whisper their legacy to you. Go on, lean in. Listen. You hear it? extraordinary.
Don't they look alike? I'm not sure if they planned that in the film, but don't they look so similar? You gotta love Robin Williams. I wanted to play a little of the docu-series. This is a little piece from episode 2, and I thought it was really timely, although I can't play the Charlie Sheen part. I've never interviewed Charlie Sheen, but I noticed he's sort of doing a docu-series of his own and kind of explaining his wild and wacky addict ways, addressing the strained relationship with his daughter, his OnlyFans worker, and Denise Richards, who's also on OnlyFans as well now, and how he is trying to deal with the family issues in the fallout of so many years of what we've watched with his antics and whatnot. But I'm not going to play that little piece, but it is in episode 2, because I did want to include a clip from Wall Street. Everyone can remember the greed is good little spiel that Michael Douglas did, and that time, especially around that time, you know, the me generation, which was very, very pivotal in the whole scheme of things of what we're seeing now, which is everyone's in their own corners, the divide and conquer seems to be having a go at humanity and all that stuff. The docuseries is based on all of those kinds of existential questions, like, how did we get here? And also the notion of higher consciousness, where are we going, human evolution, mixing human DNA with animal DNA and all that fun stuff. And so here's a little snippet. I am going to cut it a little bit short to avoid a copyright strike, but at least you can get a little bit of an idea. This one is referring to authenticity and equating higher consciousness, transcendence, greater understanding, awareness, including things like clairsentience, which has to do with above average sensibilities. You're sensing something. Claircognizance is just a knowing. Clairvoyance is the ability to be able to see with your third eye. And all of those kinds of above average sensibilities, which, referring to that earlier piece that we just saw, why is it that some seem to have the eyes to see and ears to so-called hear, and it just seems to escape others, which to me is one of the foundations of the whole existential question behind being human. And why is it that something like AI may replace something like that? Here's a little peek into the docuseries, and it's episode 2. Take a look.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Fear is in the air since man's ability to self-destruct, a criteria in all past and many annihilated human civilizations before us.
We are living in unprecedented times. humanity has not just once, many of us are familiar with the story of Atlantis, but humanity is sort of self-destruct in many ways. And there are some signs in recent years, during our time, during our lifetime, that are pointing to a similar path. We have man sort of what I would refer to as playing God by messing with human DNA, by mixing genetics with animals and with humans.
Is nuclear war a real threat? Masters of the mind, such as Carl Jung, warn that man is the real threat. At the end of Jung's life, he had a vision of a global catastrophe, including a drawing of the, quote, last 50 years of humanity. Jung's confidant, Jungian analyst Marie-Louise von Franz, who wrote and kept notes on Jung's vision of end of times, is reluctant to talk about it publicly, a thought this legendary consciousness expert finds horrific.
The beauty of all the life, to think that the billions and billions and billions of years of evolution to build up the plants and the animals and the whole beauty of nature, and that man would go out of sheer shadow foolishness and destroy it all. I mean, that all life might go from the planet. And we don't know. On Mars and Venus, there's no life. We don't know if there's any life experiment elsewhere in the galaxies. And we go and destroy this. I think it's so abominable. I try to pray that it may not happen, that a miracle happens.
A miracle? Like what? All of us owning our own stuff? Pulling back our projections, willing to look at ourselves deeply, fully? A miracle? Isn't that just maturity? Evolving, becoming conscious, enlightened, ultimately loving? There was a time in the not too distant past when being loving and kind was common among the common man. Ambition at all costs considered a sin, certainly not a virtue.
It'll be a wedding attended by the King of England.
Okay, I just realized I had to sort of stop it there because that movie clip might get a copyright strike. And just by the way, if that happens, I'll just continue on. There's an option to resume. So if for whatever reason there's some content that stops, usually what Ecamm does is it allows me to click to resume. So don't fear, I'm not going anywhere. But on the bigger picture of the existential question of where we're heading, I wanted to show a little bit so you can get a taste of what's happening, and full well understanding that this is sort of a third rail topic. The notion of going deep now is so uninteresting to most people, to say the least, that many would just prefer to, especially when we're facing hard times and it's stressful, and our precious alone quality time and with the ones we loved are just so valued. The last thing we want to do is go do a deep dive into the unconscious world. The docuseries, however, delves into the correlation between the deeper you go, the more ascended, conscious, aware, enlightened one becomes as a result of being more familiar and intimate with your story. It's no secret to people who are close to me, who know me, that I'm into dream analysis, dream work, Jungian analysis, have a deep appreciation for Freudian analysis, studied with some of the greats of our time, like a Jungian analyst and author who is now passed, Marion Woodman, who is missed for sure. Her work was pivotal in the movement while she was alive, and for so many years when we were able to work with her. I'm really grateful I was able to work with her. And she has a familiarity with the shadow side, the unconscious, subconscious side of ourselves like no other. Least of all, to be able to articulate it for the rest of the world. And you can see it when she talks about it. She always used to say to me, Grace, you know, you can hear it in the voice. The voice gives it away. And like many that I work with closely know that I always keep referring to the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul, of course, and it always gives whatever's going on in that being away. She maintains this, we would keep in contact and talk on the phone, and you can hear it even as she talks about dreams. It is deeply entrenched. I always say it's easier to be better than yourself than to be yourself, and authenticity is the key to enlightenment, consciousness, awareness. Here's Marion talking about dreams.
Who am I? If my dreams are the creation of my imagination, I can trust that. And I can really work with them and look at these images. And that can take my breath down to a place where my voice is coming from the gut. And then I can hear the voice I am when I am embodied. And I can know from my dreams the truth of what I am saying. So that it's the authenticity of the embodiment that is released into the voice. And you can speak from that place. You're not putting on any show. You are who you are.
I had the great fortune of working with her and studying with her for many years, and what was called the Marion Woodman Foundation Body Soul Rhythms workshops. They were called intensives, and they were precisely that, very intense. They were pivotal and life-changing, and I'm so grateful that before she passed, I was able to work with her several times and keep in touch with her, particularly in later years when she sort of wound down her work and was not as able to travel to Landag and London and all these lovely places. In fact, those flowers in the background remind me of when once during an intensive in Gabriola Island. Gabriola Island is off the Pacific coast of British Columbia in Canada. And Jungian analysts from around the world, they traveled, and they, in their own right, they had their own practice, and they were on their own respective specific journeys and deep journeys. The kind of work that happened on the island was just fascinating. But in any event, during a break, I think it was a supper break, we walked to this small grocery store on the island, and I bought her these flowers. You can sort of see them in the background. I'll scroll to them. And they're just lovely. I wanted to get an assortment of different colors. Okay, so
Who am I?
Let me scroll to that part
If
for a second. So these flowers in the background, and I wanted to get all these different colors because if anyone would appreciate the new life, the new growth, the budding birth of the new energy, I knew she would. And then I did that once.
The embodiment.
I did that once, and then the second
that
time
is released.
She put it on the altar. There was an altar, in the workshop room. There's as the title you would imagine reflects, body soul rhythm. It's about working with the unconscious material, integrating that into body work, honoring the body in the process of doing that. And so there was a big area. We would do a lot of body, soul work, imagery, working with the metaphor that comes up in dreams, as she mentions in that piece. And so she put it on the altar. But then the second time I did it, she said, Grace, no. I love that you bring me flowers. But, the more flowers that you buy, the more there are going to be cut. And so they're not going to be enjoyed in nature as they should. What happened on the walk back is people started to, I'm sure I was with some other analysts, and we were walking back and everybody was picking flowers. And I think the ladies were like, that's lovely, but just leave them for everyone else to enjoy. And on the island, if you've ever been to British Columbia, Canada, my word, there is no other place to get lost in the woods but there. When I lived in Vancouver for years, the scenery, the water, it's just, as you can imagine, just so beautiful. There's nothing like it. All right. Depth work, working with the metaphor, the episode 2 of authenticity has to do with the more you're able and willing to discover your truth and venture into it deeply, the more likely you will be able to not only achieve wholeness, but a greater awareness and consciousness. And I couldn't agree with it more. I think I'm a living example of that in many ways. Thank the good Lord above. And you see this in people, not just Charlie Sheen, who's sort of facing criticism for a strained relationship with his own daughter now. And now he's trying to sort of like sort all of that out and, you know, straighten his life and stay sober and all those lovely things that most people struggle with. But there's something called, in alternative media, called deathbed confessions, where people in various walks of life, whether it's law enforcement, intelligence, investigations, or wherever their work may have taken them, that once they're getting closer to sort of facing their maker and the quote unquote end, and, you know, they would really like to be a little bit more open and honest about some of their happenings going on in their life, they're called deathbed confessions. And they usually invite someone with a camera into their hospital room and they just sort of spill the beans, so to speak. You know, and it reminds me of that saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. You know, when the plane's going down, all of a sudden you sort of draw nearer to a larger understanding of it all. And I heard recently an interview with Dick Van Dyke, who, as he was announcing his retirement at 98, he mentioned that he believes that a family member comes to visit him in dreams, and that he doesn't just think it's some sort of random synapse in the brain like a lot of people do when they talk about dreams. They're like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. In fact, the only reason why I think I dreamt about it is because I saw it on TV yesterday, or I went to the movie, and that's why. And it's usually a little bit more complicated than that. I love that at his age, even though this is still very much a third rail conversation, people don't admit that they, you know, hire psychics or they come to intuitives to become a better Reiki practitioner. The truth is that when you get a little bit closer to reality, there's a larger appreciation for things that maybe you heretofore would not necessarily be as open or certainly public about. And if we've seen that anywhere in recent years, we're seeing it now. There's a lot of pressure for people to believe in the right party, what side of the aisle, what issues are sort of, you know, popular, that, or is going to really make people upset at Christmas dinner. Like there's this extra pull for people to stay polarized. And as we know, with energy in general, sinister energy maintains and promotes the divide and conquer rules. And there's a saying that I use with people I work with, that you're friendly to all life form. Congruity, alignment, and frequency and vibration is what it really makes the energy in its purest form. So this particular piece from Dick Van Dyke is quite eye-opening. He says it in a lovely, calm way. It's not that he is saying anything that isn't realized or new or hasn't been said before, but he's saying it without any hesitation. And that was lovely to see. Now, at 98, I have a joke that with my clients, and I asked my mom, actually, I was in Canada not too long ago, and I asked my mom what the real meaning behind the saying was. When you're working with people who are, 98, and they're a little bit curious, they're like, do I have much time? And there was one lady who joked with me. She goes, "You know what, Grace? I don't even buy fresh bananas." because she was joking about how she thinks any day she's going to meet the good Lord and she's going to be able to like leave this mortal coil. And she's like, I don't even buy fresh bananas, Grace. And I said, well, God bless you. How do you feel? I am good to go, she said. But anyways, here is a little bit from Dick Van Dyke's piece from that interview.
I've had dreams where I am, I don't know, depressed or lonely or hurt or something, and she comes to comfort me. Actually comes to comfort me. I've had dreams where I am, I don't know, depressed or lonely or hurt or something, and she comes to comfort me. Actually comes to comfort me.
And he says, he says the word actually, all right? And so going back to the first beginning piece on those with the eyes to see and ears to hear, the deeper discussions about consciousness is, what are you seeing? Are you having a visitation from a loved one in a dream? Are you really seeing an apparition? Is it, the line of questioning often goes, so how do you know it was a man? Well, I could see a silhouette. I could see the outline of the body. It looked like it was a man by broader shoulders. And but he uses the word actually. And I don't think that that's an accident that he uses that word actually. I think that he, at the stage that he's in life, he's okay with, being called whatever. Like, he believes that he's actually being comforted by a family member. And of course, it'll be studied and talked about for the end of time. And, I'm not going to have the answer in my lifetime, I'm sure. But it's lovely to see when people get to that point where they're just so okay with saying it like they mean it and experience. Now, I think it will always remain a third rail topic. I really do. I'm not expecting people to embrace the metaphysical, higher intuitive, practical work, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairvoyance, all the lovely prescience streams. There are prescience streams that can tell with prophetic people, they can tell, they can analyze their dreams and might get the impression, I was told once, it's a little bit eerie because your dreams are coming true. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Let's just talk about the subject. Why are you talking about that? But anyways, in the study of what makes people more likely, like I always say, it's easier to be better than yourself than to be yourself. What draws some people closer to the depth journey of wanting to really understand their story, not in a, like my father used to say, navel-gazing way, but to really truly understand why we do the things that we do and what's behind that. And I used to live in San Francisco, and the warden of Alcatraz and his family actually lived on the island. And she was doing the tour at the time. I had gone a couple of times because a few people had come to visit me. But I recall at that time I was interested in the psychology behind the inmates. Like, how did they, over a longitudinal time, how did their behavior change? And was there anything that really changed their behavior? And if so, what was that? What were the factors that seemed to soften them? Seemed to dissuade them from being more violent, because Alcatraz was no joke. They had some of the most heinous killers at that time there. And what she said is the only thing that seemed to have changed people was enough time. Once they got a lot older, they seemed to really understand their existence more, the meaning behind their incarnation, the consequence of why they were acting the way they were acting. And she said when they got older, like some of the most hardened criminals really softened up. And that makes a lot of sense to me. When you watch someone like Dick Van Dyke, he's gleefully saying that his family member actually came to comfort him. And without hesitation. He's just like, I don't care. I'm 98. Like I can't buy fresh bananas, and I am good to go. And if people think I'm crazy, God bless them. I'll see you on the other side if we meet there or whatever. But in any event, the idea of being like in my experience in working with clients, generally speaking, I get the impression that they believe that if they didn't rob any banks or kill any people, then when they get to the pearly gates, they should be okay, that they're, probably going to see loved ones again or whatever. Now, I have never been to the pearly gates, so I might not know myself, but at the same time, like, you can't help but wonder, like, is there more to it? Is the story deeper in that respect? And I'm grateful to know that the story is much deeper than that, and that it is a lovely journey of exploration into what it means to be human. And just like that little sneak peek into the docuseries, we seem to be in unprecedented times, is what I'm referring to, where we're seeing some experimentation, what I refer to, like I said in the interview, of playing God. And I think that's a dicey place to be. And I sure hope that people reflect seriously and honestly about what they're seeing, and don't just flippantly give away their free agency for no reason. Thanks so much for people. Let me see if I can. I started this little like Ecamm chat page so I can see so everyone else and you guys can see some of your topics. Just so you know, you guys, I started the YouTube channel, but I didn't really, as fate would have it, before I went live, I didn't really have a chance to see that there was all these rules. There's all these rules when it comes to when you do YouTube lives, because I'm just now venturing into it. But thanks, Corey. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike. How's everything? You're still at KK, aren't you? You're so sweet. You enjoy listening to everything I talk about. I don't know. Some of my topics are third rail out there, but thank you for saying that. Yeah, Corey, I am a little slow on the uptake in doing getting the third episode done. The first one, there's a reason why I'm not showing the first one, because I think the first one may be something that might be released on its own. And if that's the case, like so much work went into the first one. Thankfully I was able to spend time with my mom. My mom's 86 and we transitioned her into an old folks home. And I was able to spend time with her in the facility this summer. So I was able to spend a lot of time on this docu-series. The second one, I went right onto the second one as if it were just like, any other sort of assignment, and moving on. And then I have a general framework for the rest of them, but I had to go back to episode 1 because episode 1 got some eyes on it that I wanted to make sure I didn't just roll over. And I fixed a lot of stuff about it. It might just be released on its own. If that's the case, I'll certainly let you guys know. It's timely, but that's not why I did it. Truth be told, during the whole height of all the craziness we've seen in the last 5 years, I went to California and I had such unusual experiences. A few years ago, I was erasing, Mike, you'll appreciate this if you're still with us. I was erasing all my SD cards. I was erasing all the footage, and I found some extraordinary footage which can't be explained. I'm not interested in getting the verified ufologists and all these MUFON, looking at all this extraterrestrial stuff. I'm not interested in that. But I was interested in just logging it and putting it down. I was telling friends of mine that if I don't sort of memorialize it somehow, put it down somewhere, it's going to be lost forever. And I had my mouse about to click to delete it, and something told me, I'm sure I wrote it in my journal somewhere, but something told me not to delete it. And I didn't even know what I was deleting. Honestly, it probably wasn't labeled I don't even think it was even labeled officially. Anyone who's worked with me at stations knows I'm the worst labeler. I'm like, this one, pick this one, better master, most recent master. And Mike knows those are not the titles that you use. But I played it and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, it could be explained away with a lot of anomalies, especially during this age of AI. You can recreate anything. You know, I'm saying to my clients now, believe like none of what you see, none of what you hear, none of what you see and hear about what you saw and heard. Because it's very easy to recreate anything really. But for my own record's sake, I thought, gosh, you know, I better put this down. And I started to write down a rough sketch in my journal just of the different happenings that happened. I wanted to make sure I got the dates right and what the spaces were, because the dates, what happened and happens to this day, it just happened last week. There is numerology and gematria related to all sort of metaphysical existential happenings. The sinister side has sort of hijacked it and does sort of an homage to the dark altar in their own wacky ways. But I was so taken back by how much and I believe this applies to everyone, your day and year and month of birth and coincides with other things. Not necessarily that it loops, like some of the time travel people really believe that parallel universes can sort of loop and there's a looping movement to it. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. There is a highly intelligent, sophisticated makeup of numbers in relation to third density meaning where we are mortal here on Earth, happenings, and to such a precise degree that I wanted to make sure it wasn't lost. So I put it all together, and then Stan asked me to do that interview that's in that little sneak peek at the docuseries. And you know, Stan was like, you know, I gave him all of these questions. He wanted me to give him questions. He's out of Toronto. And he wanted to give me all these questions ahead of time. So I quickly, you know, as you do, you just jot them down so quickly. And I just sent them to him. Well, he didn't like those questions, because as we were prepping before we went on air for the show, he said, you know, Grace, is it okay if I ask you other questions? And I was like, sure, you know. So as a result, after that, it was longer than just an hour. It was a few hours. I realized there was so much material that I was kind of missing and not being really fully responsible in getting it all down. So I started to edit. I just quickly jotted down a rough skeleton of what I thought to be would just be different segments in a 1 hour show. And it ended up, long story short, what ended up happening is I realized that the story is still ongoing, that higher intelligence communication may have started around COVID, but it certainly hasn't stopped. And the happenings that we have going on now, which does refer to that episode 2 clip that I just showed, has to do with the times that we're in and how sort of what I would refer to as cavalier in the sort of, you know, rattle caging between countries about wars and whatnot. And I think that's a reckless place to be in. JMO. But I can't ignore some of the information that I'm getting in reference to that. So long story short, that stuff is still going on. Now, what I normally did, like I did with the previous live stream, is I try to, this is what I was going to say about Valerie Harper. So I've watched so just like Dick Van Dyke, I've been keeping a close eye before Valerie Harper passed away. She seemed to do one of those like 11th hour wake ups. Because some of the quotes that she was coming out with, I was like, oh my word, like this is incredible. She had cancer. Her cancer went into remission, and then it came back. And when it came back, she would come out with these beautiful sayings that for anyone who's sort of, you know, done a deeper dive, you just can't ignore when you hear stuff like that. Here's a few examples of what she said. And this has to do, of course, with the notion of that, which do you focus on more? when it comes to energy? Do you focus more on the doom and gloom, so much so that it kind of, you don't want to get out of bed? Or do you celebrate life and show up for it, even though the whole world might be caving in and everyone's talking about war? And here are some of the sayings that she had. Lovely. There we go. She would say, don't go to the funeral until the day of the funeral. Live this day. And you know, it was lovely that she knew that. I really want Americans and all of us to be less afraid of death and know that it's a passage. Don't go to your funeral the day before the funeral. And all of us, of course, have people in our lives who might be struggling with illness or with their health, issues that are really critical that need to be monitored and cared for through time. And so while that's not, doesn't seem like a hugely profound saying, when you're looking at what Jim Carrey told me once, fewer days ahead of you than behind you, you start to look at things differently. You start to go, you know what? Holy cow, like maybe I should give that sister a call. or maybe that was not my finest moment. Is there any way that I can go back and do something about it? Do you know what I'm saying? Anyways, Valerie Harper and her passing, although sad, the fact that she got that it was a passing, you know, and even people like Joseph Campbell talk about how it's a thin fine. Well, this was in his, you may remember his Bill Moyers series, and he's talked about it many times in his work with mythology through time. He would talk about how this life and the next, it's a thin fine thread, and like a veil, and that's lovely. All right, so as everybody who works with me knows, okay, you still like KK? Oh, that's awesome. Oh, thanks, Mike. You're so sweet. Happy to hear him. Yeah, my mom is still here. Is your mom is still here, right, Corey? Gosh, I hope so. Yeah, mom, she's 86, and she's just sweeter than sweet. You know, she's most comfortable in bed at the facility, but of course, you know, I have my laptop and I was editing right beside her, and anybody who knows me, I'm going to ask a gazillion questions. So I was like, you know, what happened when you know, were 4? Or like, what happened when you were growing up? So what made you move to and how did you meet Dad? And how did that happen? You know, check yours out. Check your out. 7577. Oh, those are your numbers. Well, the 3 7s are noteworthy. So 12 and 14, 26. Anyways, yeah, the numbers are no joke. Like, to such a degree to where things were happening in California on the exact date that a historic event happened not too far away. I'm not going to give it away, but someday it'll come out, I'm sure. In the Palm Desert, exact day and month, and similar experience as noteworthy stuff in history. And I wrote it down, but in hindsight, when Stan and I talked for the interview, I was like, holy crap, like, I can't just let this stuff go by. Anyway, there's a few funny things, few sweet things. I'm going to have to mute the music because otherwise I'm going to get a copyright strike. But here, I saw this on TikTok. Well, actually, you know where I did see it? There's a really lovely truther out there. I'm not sure. I haven't seen her in a while, so I sure hope that she's okay. But she retweeted something that was on TikTok about about kittens and babies. And what I liked so much about this, and Mike, you'll appreciate it, they must have used sort of a night vision camera in some of the rooms for the video that came out of this, because it shows kitties warming up to babies, and obviously some people use their phones, right? But take a watch of this, and I'm gonna mute the music so I don't get a copyright strike. Okay, so my mic is on. Like, that looks like night vision. I'm not sure for sure, but that might be, right? Because there's no adults around there, or they just made it black and white. But could this not be more sweet? You know, as we watch these things, I always wonder, what, like, because of course, you know, we're always looking for things that might be AI inspired. But you know what? The tenderness, one of the sinister goals or criticisms of humanity is that we're too slow, too tender, too heavy, and we're just useless eaters. Anybody who's paid attention to sort of the go at humanity right now would know that that's actually documented, those words. And when I look at something like that, I'm like, aw. I mean, it doesn't get much more tender than that. Are you kidding me? That's lovely. Okay, I have a funny one. This reminds me of me trying to park my truck, which is not a good sight to see. I think I have to turn the music off on this one as well. Okay. This reminds me of me trying to park my truck. So, of course, parallel parking isn't easy, but my word. Okay. And look how small that little car is. And this is the best attempt at parking of the entire thing. And it goes from good to not so good and continues on forever. Okay, watch. Oh my word. Oh, turn. Too late. Oh, you're in. Oh, stop. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's just crazy. So the car is so small, you can probably guess by the direction it's going to now where it's going to end up. See, it's the exact same way as the first attempt. So what he ends up doing, watch what he ends up doing. Or she, I don't want to say whether it's a woman or a man. Oh my word, that is so funny. Okay, this is how it ends up. But look how small it is, even vertically. No, it looks like he sticks out as far as the truck. Or it looks like by a couple of feet, so he may not have had a problem. Anyways, everyone, thank you for stopping by. I just wanted to put this out there real quick. I'm probably going to try and also have it streaming on YouTube, but you can certainly keep watching from Facebook. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, feel free to email me at gracebookcontact@gmail.com. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.